McMinnville's Daniel Turpin pitching up in New Britain, Double-A with the Twins, is 3-1 with a 5.73 ERA with 24 games, and he has 29 Ks in 33 innings. Again, McMinnville's Craig Sitton pitching up at Tulsa with the Rockies at Double-A is 3-2 with a 2.57. 33 games, he has 3 saves. And then Linfield College's Kelson Brown, playing at the Double-A level for Altoona, is hitting 309 in 22 games. He just came off of the disabled list. And then finally, our sponsor, one of our sponsors with Base by Pros, Mitch Canham, is catching over at Harrisburg at the Double-A level with the Washington Nationals. He's not getting much time. He has played in 23 games and is hitting 183. So there you go with the local watch. And let's get to my guest. This man is special. He really is special. His name is Darin Sargent. He was a year behind me at Kimberly High School back home in Kimberly, Idaho, class of 87. And he is a pastor and a motivational speaker. Darin, how you doing this morning?
Hey, Norm, I'm doing great. Great to talk to you, man.
It's been a long time.
I know, bro. It's too long. Seems like yesterday, but it's been a while.
It has been a while. So what have you been doing, man? I mean, it's been almost 30 years. What have you been doing with yourself?
Well, man, you name it. I been married for going on 21 years, got 3 wonderful kids, live in San Diego, California. Rough place to live. The weather's horrible down there. But man, just living life and doing what I can do.
So Darin is just a guy on his journey of life. And he is, like I said, a motivational speaker. He is also an author. And let me see if I can get this right. So he is author of the handbook, the thumb book, and Thank You, Mr. Jenkins. Did I get that right?
Yeah. The handbook's my recent release, 5 Forces to Form Your Future. Just talks about, for those that don't know who I am, I was born with the gift of having only one hand, and it is been a challenge, but it's also been a great journey. And so I try to just encourage people, speak in high schools across the country, conferences and camps and conventions, and these books have kind of come out of some of my experiences in life. The Thank You, Mr. Jenkins book actually is the story of my 4th grade teacher there in Kimberly, and the difference he made in my life. And the rule of thumb is just a book about why accept average. And then the handbook, of course, is 5 key principles that I've found in my life that have helped me to overcome some of the struggles that I've had, Norm.
Right. We'll get to those 5 principles here, but let's talk a little bit about Mr. Jenkins. I think I got to Kimberly after Mr. Jenkins was gone. I don't remember him. But tell us about Mr. Jenkins.
Well, what was interesting is we moved from the state of California to Idaho when I think I was 9 years old. So right in the middle of the 4th grade year, I believe it was close to the end of October, 1st November of that year. And so I left one school in California, came to the school there in Kimberly, and being different with, being born with only one hand, it was a little difficult to fit in at first. And I wanted to, I remember one day I wanted to play football with all the guys at recess, and they wouldn't let me play. I wanted to show them I could whoop them single-handedly, but they wouldn't let me play. And I came back into the classroom. I was pretty distraught. I think I was probably crying. I know that probably doesn't sound like a real manly thing at the time, but Mr. Jenkins found out what had happened, and he kind of made an example. I'd had a real bad experience in my 1st grade year with a teacher where I wore my prosthetic arm and accidentally caught this kid in the lip with it, and the teacher told me how bad I was. But 3 years later, in the 4th grade there in Kimberly, Mr. Jenkins found out that, this kid's different and it's going to be difficult for him to fit in. So I'm going to change the I don't know if he really knew what he was doing at the time, but it made a difference in my life. And he called up 4 or 5 kids, and he pointed out all their differences. And then he called me up, and he said, Darin is no different than anybody else. And Norm, from that moment on, things just kind of changed. And so about 5 years ago, maybe 6, well, it's been about 5. It was right around my birthday 5 years ago that I wrote this book. Thank you, Mr. Jenkins, telling the story of my first grade teacher, the negative impact she had and the positive impact that Mr. Jenkins had. And the last page of the book says, I don't even know if you're alive, don't even know if you're out there, but if you are, I have one thing to say, thank you. You've made a difference in my life. And I wrote this book. It was sent to press when I was doing a motivational speech for Kimberly High School teachers, actually the whole Kimberly School District. And I went into our old high school, Norm, and the superintendent was in there, and she remembered me, and I asked her, I didn't even know Mr. Jenkins' first name at this time. I had no clue what it was. All I know is Mr. Jenkins. And she goes, oh, John Jenkins, I know exactly where he's at. He's retired now. She contacted him. He called me. I took him out to breakfast, told him the story, and he remembers it just like it was yesterday. And so we've had kind of a cool relationship since then. I was doing a motivational speech at a school in Nevada. He drove down and brought a video crew. We videoed an interview together. It's available on my website. It was really just a great experience because he made such a lasting impact in my life. And I still, on occasion, touch base with him. His family has now reached out to me and thanking me for, just being an inspiration for him later in his life. You never know who you're going to make a difference for.
Absolutely.
And Mr. Jenkins made a difference for me.
Looking back in our time in Kimberly, there was a lot of teachers that were like that.
Exactly.
It's kind of funny, 30 years down the road, then, it really didn't matter. You just wanted to get a Dodge and get on with your life. But 30 years, down the road, you look down and, Mr. McAdams, a man who had an impact over a lot of us young men.
Sure.
PE teacher, coached wrestling, coached a little bit of football. A great, great man. And
that's right. We were on the wrestling team together, weren't we, Norm?
We did wrestle. Now we didn't wrestle each other because I was quite a bit heavier. But
you were a little bit heavier than me, if I remember right.
Yeah, I got to roll around with Chad Z and Gordy Schroeder. Great times there.
I feel sorry for you right now.
Oh man, Gordy he had no mercy, man.
He was a gorilla.
He was a gorilla. Let's talk about who, besides Mr. Jenkins, who also made an impact on your life there at Kimberly High School.
A lot of teachers, of course. Mrs. Sullivan, Mrs. Rogerson. Mrs. Rogerson and I still keep in touch. In fact, she wrote she's in my I don't know, credits, I guess you could say, in the handbook. She wrote a thing for me, and it's in there. She just made an incredible impact on my life. But I think the most important thing, and this is something that I tell students all the time when I talk to them, and it's part of, I've got a motivational speech I call The Bases of Life. And one of the key things is relationships. I think the thing that probably impacted my life more than anything, Norm, was the friendships that were established in high school, everyone accepting me for who I was, and not pushing me. We were a tight-knit group. Your class was tight-knit. Our class was tight-knit. But those relationships, I make a statement often, show me your friends, I'll show you your future.
Yep.
And that probably right there was the most impacting part of my life, was the friends that, to this day, I mean, Norm and I, just getting back in contact with each other after years. I've followed you on Facebook for a while, seen some of the stuff you've done. We've chatted back and forth through Facebook and social media. But to come back in contact with someone 30 years ago, and it's like we're picking up where we left off. And friendships, relationships, connections like that, you can't put a price tag on it, Norm. they're invaluable.
You know, you talked about Mrs. Sullivan a little bit, and I hope you're talking about Carla, because I do believe Carla is watching us stream live this morning. So Mrs. Sullivan over there in Florida, we love you. Thank you. And yeah, it was great growing up in Kimberly. You know, the memories, and it was all about the people, and like I said, like at the time you kind of just overlook it, but 30 years down the road, and that big gorilla Gordy Schroeder and I probably talk to Gordy a couple of times a month now, and
That's awesome.
we've become really good friends and stuff through social media and whatnot and stuff like that. So let's talk a little bit about the 5 principles.
Okay. When I wrote the handbook, I noticed there were 5 key things that were primarily significant from my life, and I began by talking about foundation. And I play everything off. If you've looked at any of my stuff, everything's off one hand. The rule of thumb,
Yep.
five forces. I've got one hand. My whole motivational business is called "Let Me Give You a Hand," and I've had a great time and with this gift that I've been given. But I talk about foundation first of all. If you don't know what your life is built on, if it's not something solid, nothing else matters. There has to be a proper foundation. And I talk about that, the importance of making sure your life is grounded on something. And a lot of that is your identity, understanding who you are. I'm speaking with students and even adults. They may not have a physical disability like I was born with, but they're dealing with something. And if we allow our circumstances to define us, we're going to be in trouble. We've got to define our circumstances. And so the foundation of life is understanding who you are, your identity, your purpose. Why were you placed on this earth? What are you called to do? And from there, I go into chapter number 2, where I talk about faith. And when I talk about faith, I'm talking about faith in who we are, understanding. I'm a pastor, of course, so part of that is going to deal with my belief in God and having faith in Him when life doesn't make sense. There's hope in God, and I talk about that. But then I also talk about faith in who I am and faith in what I'm called to do. Then I go into focus, and this is important because focus is primarily one of the things that I've had to really deal with, because I've had to look at life differently, and it's been a challenge. I took a golf a few years ago, was featured on CNN for my golf game, and it required incredible focusing on who I am, where I'm going, what I'm supposed to do. And then I get into finance and talk about just making sure we're not stretching ourselves too thin, living within our means, and just some of the principles that I've learned over life and financial areas. And then I end with family, and that's a special point for me. I've been up in northern Idaho this week with some family and just enjoying it. And our family is primarily the most important factor in our lives, and I deal with some typical family stuff. Just make sure you're creating memories that inspire your kids for the future. I look back on our time there in Idaho growing up, the memories that were created. I have memories of you, Norm, times of interaction in high school. And memories are important for our families. And so those are it. Foundation, faith, focus, finance, and family are the 5 key things that I think if you learn these principles and the importance of them, you can build a solid and a foundational life that will last, make an impact. I say this often: you'll never make an impact until you're committed to the collision. And you have to be willing to say, okay, what is it that I'm called to do? Let me hit it head on and go for it.
Nice. Very well said.
That's a Cliff Notes version, bro. You have to buy it.
I'm gonna have to snag that up. So I'm gonna put you on the spot. So you didn't know this one was coming. I know that growing up, Darin was all-state choir. And, I mean, the man could sing. So my question for you is, give me your top 5 songs of all time.
Oh, man. Top 5 songs. You know I'm going to go to the 80s.
I do know that.
You know I'm going to go to Journey and Steve Perry and Faithfully, and I'm going to have to go to REO Speedwagon. I Can't Fight This Feeling any longer. We got to throw in a little bit of Lionel Richie.
Absolutely.
We got to throw a little bit of him. He was big. In fact, in my wedding, I sang his song that I sang at one of the concerts there in Kimberly. Truly,
yeah.
That's a top 5. Kenny Loggins, Forever. Man, I'm going now to the big hair bands. There was a group. They had a one hit. Do you remember the group named Sheriff?
Yes, I'll Be With You. Absolutely.
Yeah, and so those are kind of, those are some impacting songs, man. They don't have music like they had in the 80s.
Oh, heck no. Heck no. I'm a way up. It was kind of funny because Flock of Seagulls came on, and when that song comes on, dude, you're singing regardless.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
But man, those were great times. Looking back, and and being, moving to Kimberly, after my dad retired from the Army, Kimberly was a tough place to fit in at first. As you know, and I could totally relate with that experience. Being an Army brat, trying to fit in this little town of 2,300, and it was man, life was so slow. But I look back on it now.
It was.
What a great time. Wouldn't have traded it for anything in the world. The education we got.
Yeah. Exactly.
Though it was limited, and what we were able to get, but looking back, we all were a tight-knit group. And it's like you said, I could call up anybody that we went, for the most part, that we went to school with, and it'd be just like picking up a conversation 30 years later.
Exactly.
What a great place. Darin, go ahead and plug your website and your books for us. Okay.
DarinSargent.com. That's DarinSargent.com. On there, I have a link to where you purchase the handbook. You can download Rule of Thumb for free just by subscribing to my website and my blog. And writing a lot of material. I'm working on my whole The Bases Matter right now, the bases of life. And talking about, I know Norman and I talked about this the other day, but I played baseball, pitched for several years, so baseball's kind of always been a part of my life. And I look at baseball as a metaphor for life, just the bases matter and the order of the bases matter. And I have some material on some of that up there. And I would love to connect, and whatever I can do to help students, adults, I'm available. I love talking to people. That's what I do for a living.
And he is good at it. So once again, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Darin Sargent. Darin, I appreciate you coming on, and definitely would love to have you back on again sometime soon. And enjoy Idaho, man. Enjoy Twinkie Flats.
Thanks, Norm.
Do me
really
a favor.
Enjoyed being on the show.
Do me a favor, though. This is when you go back to Twin. This is what I would like you to do. I would like you to wander into Papa Kelsey's.
Oh, I've got to.
I would like you to order an Italian combo with no tomato for me. And if Robin Palmer, I hear Robin Palmer is still, I think he's managing, or he owns it by now. He's got to own it by now.
Unbelievable.
I think Robin is still around, and if Robin's still around, tell him hello.
I will, Dad. It's so good to talk to you, Norm. Thanks for the opportunity. Brian, thank you. Nice to meet you over the phone line. And again, thanks for the opportunity, man.
Hey, you're welcome, and thank you, and I'll be in touch with you.
Sounds good.
All right, Darin, thank you very much. Once again, Darin Sargent, www.darin, D-A-R-I-N, sargent.com. Awesome guy. definitely really motivational, watching him. I watched the CNN do the golf thing, and the guy, there's nothing that man can't do. I mean, it never slowed him down. And obviously, as you can tell, he never looked at it as a hindrance. It was a blessing, and great guy. So this is Norm, along with producer Brian. We will be back for another show. I'd like to plug our sponsors. Thanks, Brian. So right off the top of the head, Proper Cuts Barbershop on Baker Street, Carlos and the boys. Base by Pros, Mitch Canham, basebypros.com. Baseballdudes.com, Chris Gazelle up there in Vancouver, Washington. Mitch's dad, Mark, with MDM Design. He does our shirts. And baseballism.com. Go to baseballism.com, type in the code Clubhouse Chatter while you're checking out, and you could save 15% on your order. So thanks for listening, and we'll see you in a few more minutes.